Hello, Montgomery County. My name is Brandon Langer, and I'm the Program Administrator for Instructional Technology with MCIU's Office of Professional Learning. And this is Talking EdTech with MCIU, which is our opportunity to take a look at various products across the EdTech landscape, find out where they may fit into our classrooms, our curriculum. And today we have a really unique product to look at because this is one that was new to me at Pete and C this year, 2022. And that is a program by a company called Plasma Games. So joining me today is Rose Roberts from Plasma, and I'm going to hand it off to her to introduce herself, and then we'll kind of go through this whole conversation about a really unique, not just game, but platform that you are offering really all of our schools for free, which is pretty exciting. So Rose, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. As he led into, my name is Rose Roberts. I'm our Chief Operating Officer here at Plasma Games. I am a former educator. I taught middle school math and science for several years before continuing my journey into education here at Plasma.
Yeah, and I love how you say that, because a lot of people say, well, I left the classroom. It's like, no, but we're still all in education. We're still advancing the space forward. It doesn't matter that you're not there every single day with kids. You're advancing a really unique platform here with Plasma Games. There's a game called Sci-Ops we'll get into in a little bit. But when we spoke before, you mentioned this kind of phrase and lingo that was, I think, is important in our conversation today, and that is the difference between game-based learning and gamification. So for our audience, just kind of curious if you could go into that a little bit and kind of explain what you mean by the difference there.
Yeah, I think those two terms are used very interchangeably in the education world, and they're actually very different. Gamification is taking game-like elements and then adding it to a learning activity. So you have a quiz, for example, but then the faster your kids answer, the more points they get. A leaderboard, that is just a glorified quiz, and you're adding game-like elements. And though they are successful for engagement in the moment, research shows that over long periods of time, they actually are not any more successful in teaching your students any new concepts. Where game-based learning is actually taking those learning concepts and building the game from there. So we're starting with those educational standards and then teaching those through an entertaining game mechanic that they might be more familiar with in their video games at home.
Yeah, and I have seen this platform and played a little bit myself. And one thing you're alluding to is that you're taking game design as the core element that's going to build out from the venue in which we're going to be learning. We're not learning a bunch of stuff and then playing a game about it. I remember making a Jeopardy game to kind of quiz my teammates and our classmates in school back in the day. You're really learning through this platform much in the same way as you alluded to. You play a video game and learn about that environment. And that comes down to the game design. And obviously the game industry has exploded in the last 20, 30 years and just continues to grow. But the really clever design elements are the ones that invite you into a space and you learn about that space almost from scratch. And I think that's something that your game models very well. So what is the game itself? What are those learning intentions and outcomes? And then what are students doing in the game to provide that learning experience?
Yeah, kids learn things through video games all the time, but the things they're learning are like magic resistance is better than fire resistance. And if I get this blue super drink that falls from the sky, then like I have a longer regenerative shield. Why not use that as leverage for us educators? They love video games. They learn so much. Let's make them the actual things that we want them to learn. And that's why we've been so successful. So our first release is Sci-Ops Gold Defense. It is a chemistry and physical science learning game. It covers physical science standards from 6th grade through 12th. And we take things that they're familiar with. So for example, a health bar is something that so many students are familiar with in their video games. In our game, they see that health bar through a thermochemistry curve. The distance it takes for their armor to heat up until it's reached that melting point, it's actually going to act as a regenerative shield. If they stay out of danger's way, their armor will cool off. After they've reached that melting point, but before they've completed that phase change, that is their health bar. So students, when they're picking their armor, they're choosing from the periodic table of elements. And they need to pay attention to not some random stats that were just generated, but the actual properties to these elements are the stats for their gear. And they need to pay attention to specific heat diffusion, all of these things, because that is their health bar and their regenerative shield. Another example is calibrating an attack. That's something that students do all the time in their video games, but in ours, the distance that the electron drops in the Bohr model is actually going to affect the energy, frequency, and wavelength of the electromagnetic wave that comes out of their laser. So again, these are all things that they're picking up as they're playing anyways. The more energy, the stronger their shot, whatever it might be, but we're just leveraging that by using those game mechanics tied to the actual science standards.
And I love what you're saying. I mean, I remember chemistry fairly well and physical science fairly well, but it's been a long time, and a lot of these terms are somewhere deep in my brain, but they were quizzed on and forgotten, and not there was nothing really to engage with in all the aspects that you were just kind of mentioning when you're talking about facts, when you're talking about scientific terms and that kind of thing. You're anchoring it to an experience, which I think is just very impactful. It's something that honestly, as a music teacher, that we do all the time, because music's very attached to experiences like that, and we remember that song because of this point in time of our life when it's important. It's not too dissimilar with those of us that play video games. And if you're an administrator, you're a teacher, you're not really invested in video games. I can tell you it's a similar type of experience to other art forms. You remember when movies came out, when you heard that first song. I remember video games from very specific points in time, and I remember insane details about them because of the environment and the experience that it afforded me to learn about what those designers had created. So, and I know that this product, you just kind of outlined some of the nuts and bolts and how it's based on facts, but Plasma's offerings don't just end there. They don't just end with the game itself. Can you explain a little bit else of what teachers, schools, and districts can leverage in support of the game environment?
Yeah, our goal as educators is to teach them these concepts, but also for our students to have a deep level of comprehension. That's the ultimate goal. And really, it's just a break from their routine. Like you're saying, a video game, you don't have to be a gamer as a teacher for you to use this in your class. It is very tutorialized, it's very friendly, but we also have a whole set of curricular materials that are going to feel a lot more familiar for our teachers to make sure that our kids aren't in there just beating aliens and clicking around, but they're actually learning what we want them to learn. So I like to think of Sci-Ops as a super cool textbook. It teaches all these new concepts, and then our curriculum materials help reinforce what they learned during the gameplay, making sure that there's making those connections that I'm sharing with you, the health bar, calibrating the attack, the regenerative shield. And then we also have resources that assess so that teachers can see what it is they're getting from the game. We have a whole teacher portal that helps with real-time data, showing teachers exactly what aspects of these standards are students mastering, and then providing them with resources to help fill in those gaps for them. All tied into a very engaging platform with character dialogue. We have comics, everything that we have, even if it's just a simple assessment, it's all tied into the narrative. It's characters, there's a whole storyline. These aliens are invading. As a middle school teacher, I know that they buy into a theme. I know that it makes things so much better. So we really try to build this world for them to learn physical science and also make the connections between these topics. That's another thing that I think we've done very successfully that I wanted when I was in the classroom is we teach things as units. Oh, we're learning about waves. We're learning about energy. Oh, now we're learning about atomic structure. And students don't always realize that all of those things are interconnected. They are all physical science. And by using the same types of gear, the jump boots, the same characters, like exploring and improving upon these things, we're allowing them to see the connections between these topics and laying a really strong foundation for their current learning and their future learning.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that. I actually didn't think about it before we started our chat today, but that is true. You kind of launch into the game. There's no, as you do with any video game, there's no, sit and learn about no, you're dropped in a world and you start interacting with that world, and then you find your way through. And that's true of any well-designed video game. So I'm happy that you're describing that experience, because that was similar to what I did in my trial with the platform. So I think one of the more unique aspects of this is not just that it is game-based learning and that you have all these support curriculum, but this is actually free for districts to use. And a lot of people kind of, might bat an eye at that or not really totally always believe it because of the current market of products out there right now. But what can you tell us about this free offering? How would someone take advantage of this game in their classroom or for their whole school?
Yeah, I think when people hear that something has no cost associated to it, they think that it's poor quality, which I would argue to say it is complete opposite. We aren't necessarily free. We are at no
Correct.
cost to districts. So our districts do not pay us themselves for our platform to be utilized. We have very strong research backing. When we started, actually, we were funded through an NSF grant. And since then, we've done 3 research studies with NC State, Clemson, multiple different universities, and we've shown best in the world results. Our students show across all socioeconomic statuses, races, genders, a 19% increase in learning gains after playing the game one time for 20 to 30 minutes. We also showed that students are 5 times more likely to pursue a chemistry related or STEM career after using our platform. And right now, out of college, 8 of the top 10 highest paying jobs are STEM jobs. Most of them are chemistry related, actually. And that's because less than 1% of students say chemistry is their favorite class. So we have a small subset of students that like this topic, which creates a large demand in the workforce for qualified chemists, qualified STEM experts. So that's our mission here at Plasma. It is to positively change life trajectories from our students to our teachers to, our community by inspiring these students, creating a strong foundation for their learning, but also informing them of what STEM careers are out there for them, what opportunities. Speaking for myself, I'm a first generation college graduate and I loved science in school. I loved it. And I thought I could be a teacher or I could be a doctor. And I didn't want to be a doctor. So what did I become? I became a science teacher so I could share my love of science. And though that's great and I'm passionate, I didn't know anything about pharmaceuticals or a textile engineer. There are so many career fields that I either didn't know about or didn't think were accessible for me in my circumstances. And in our video game, as students progress through these missions, they actually rescue these STEM experts and then they could partner up with them for some sort of upgrade to their gear, technology buff, whatever it is. And in our curricular resources, all of our units are tied to a different STEM field. We have virtual job shadows, technology spotlights. Every time we try to connect what they're learning in class to how that can actually be a job in the real world, so that if you are students like, wow, I really love this. I really love learning about atomic structure. Well, here are some careers that have to do directly with what you're learning in class.
Awesome, Rose. Yeah, I again, it just keeps going deeper and deeper with what everything that's kind of packed into this experience. So I want to thank you for joining me today and just kind of giving us a rundown. I'm assuming if districts or school personnel are interested, they'll reach out through Plasma Games, your website. I'll drop it here on the bottom so everybody has it and easy access to it. But once again, thanks for what you're doing in the space. I think it's very unique. Thank you for finding a creative ways to fund it so that it's at no cost to districts, which is awesome. And thanks for just creating a really cool opportunity to learn for students. It stood out to me from my personal experience, so I appreciate it. And anything you want to make sure everybody knows about before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I don't know if I maybe answered your last question as great. Because of our strong research backing, we are able to get funded through state and federal grants. So people always ask, how are you funded then? How can this be at no cost? That is why. So we do pull on other resources, and that does allow it to be at no cost for districts, especially in Pennsylvania. Because of our research, we've been able to get some great funding and are able to provide it across the state to any district that's interested. If you would like to learn more, see some visuals, you'll go through a whole tutorial on what it is, a little deeper dive. Brandon will drop that website in there, fill out the form, and then we'll set you up with the web chat and they can answer any specific curriculum questions. Everything is aligned to all of Pennsylvania standards, so they could show you in a little bit more detail and we could get your district started as soon as you have your meeting.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again, Rose. And for anyone that hasn't seen us before, this is a series called Talking EdTech with MCIU. Please feel free to check out our Learn page, learn.mciu.org, where these are housed. They are also housed on our YouTube playlist from the Office of Professional Learning. Thank you again, Rose, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.